there we are. So now we're recording.
It's all good. It happens.
Well, please, everyone, welcome my guest this week on Fearless Conversations. This is Jennifer Lancaster. And again, I am Geva Salerno, founder of Over 40 Fearless and Free. Jennifer Lancaster is an intuitive life coach. And we're going to find out exactly what an intuitive life coach is and how an intuitive life coach is just a little bit different. It's just a little bit different type of life coach and who does very specific things to help people improve their lives. But we're starting out by talking about her past, and she's moved around quite a bit. Started in Maryland and moved several places, including Maui and Miami, right?
The Big Island. I was on the Big Island of Hawaii, not Maui.
Oh, Hawaii. Okay.
And Miami and the Virgin Islands and Dallas.
Oh my gosh. Okay. That's a
kind
really nicely well-rounded background. Yes. So you've seen a lot of different things about life. Was there anything in particular that drew you to those places?
Each place had a reason, like I lived in Maryland and I worked in the restaurant business for a really long time. And I was working in fine dining, and our chef left our restaurant and was going down to the Caribbean to open a restaurant. And he asked a bunch of us to help him. And I'm like, wow, when am I going to get this opportunity again? And I was in my 20s and I had just gotten certified for I was in the fitness industry for a long time too. But I had just gotten certified in the fitness industry for group fitness. So I went down there for a year, worked with him, taught fitness in a gym, and then wanted to learn more about fitness. And there wasn't anywhere for me to learn. And in the meantime, my sister and her husband had moved to Dallas. They're like, the dollar goes so far here. You can get so much of a cheaper place that's bigger here than in Maryland because we're right outside DC. Fitness is booming. You should come here. But I already had my eyes on Hawaii and kind of knew that Dallas was a stopping point in my journey. Got fitness education, then moved to Hawaii. Loved Hawaii, but it was so far from family that was like really what brought me back to the mainland.
So I just want to jump in and ask you or point out that that's really fearless to leave what you've known forever in Maryland and head out to the Caribbean, the islands, not knowing if it's going to work out. There wasn't any security with that at all. So that was a big jump. And tell us a little bit about that fearlessness and how you felt doing that.
At the time, I think I actually probably had more guts than I do now. In that sense, like in some ways, because, when you're young, you're not really attached to anything like, I feel like in your 20s, you don't worry as much about security. At least I didn't. And I worked in the restaurant business and I already had a job waiting for me. But I did, and I was ready to go experience something new. So I was just like hungry for something new, and I'd always been a free spirit, and I felt like this was my chance because I knew someone that opened a restaurant. So I just dove in with 2 feet. That move didn't get scary until I got down there, but like the actual act of moving was exciting.
Yeah. Let's come back to this. I want to jump in and ask you about intuitive life coaching.
Yeah.
And let's do 2 things. One, first, let's describe or define what a life coach is, what they do, how they can help people, and then specifically what an intuitive life coach does and what's the nuance? What's the slight difference?
Yeah, so a life coach, and I'm certified through a company called Inner Glow Circle. They are an accredited program by the International Coaching Federation, all women's, all virtual program. A life coach is very different. I get this question a lot. How is a life coach different than a therapist? And I think that's like a great place to start. A therapist will really like dive into your past. They show up more like a consultant. They'll actually like give you advice. Whereas a life coach co-creates with you in the moment and helps you to discover your own ahas by asking powerful questions and being trained in active listening. So a life coach is not giving advice ever. They are taking a stand for the client's goals, helping them move and partner with them and meeting them where they are. And the whole dance of the relationship is really about powerful questioning and active listening.
How does accountability play into it?
There are accountability structures set up too in every session or in every container, whether it's like a 3-month container. What's the overarching goal? Why is it that what do you want to accomplish by the time we're done working together? So yes, there are accountability structures set up as well.
To help people meet their goals.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And then what's the nuance with an intuitive life coach?
So where this is a little bit different is I have 2 decades of recovery work from codependency in the 12-step world. And then living in Hawaii, I was exposed to a lot of different healing modalities. I'm a certified angel and ascended card master reader, and I'm really big into meditation. So I take what I've learned in the recovery world and also all the modalities that I learned about when I lived in Hawaii, and I bring these things into my practice. And I also bring, like, I went to school for art, so I'm very, very creative. And part of being an intuitive life coach, I think, really helps women connect with their creativity more so than a regular life coach.
Okay. How does that look? What does that mean for a client to connect with their creativity? What does it look like on the ground? What are they doing?
Well, it looks different for everyone, but depending on how someone shows up, there's a lot of like creative exercises that I will help my client work through to help them tap into the creative part of their brain, the right side of their brain, which I think when you open that door, someone can all of a sudden see possibilities in their lives where they couldn't before.
Right. Okay, so let's take a step back to Hawaii, which it sounds like kind of really jump-started some of this, or
really
influenced this story quite a bit. So take us back to when you were thinking about going to Hawaii, what was the beginning like, and some of the things that you learned along the way and that you were exposed to, and how they kind of play into today.
Yeah, so when I left the Caribbean, like I went to Dallas and I got certified in many different fitness, like I was a personal trainer and I was getting more fitness certifications. But I had my eyes on Hawaii because I knew once I got to Dallas that I have to be by water. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to work long term. Like, there's not enough nature here. So I already had my eyes on Hawaii, and I had been to Oahu before. And I'm like, I don't think Oahu is the island. And I started researching all the islands. And for some reason, the Big Island really spoke to me because the more I would read about it, it was known as like the island where visionaries go, where artists go. It's known as the healing island. Every single island has a little bit of a different, what they're known for. And that really drew me in for some reason. I felt called to go there. And I moved there and I didn't know anybody. Mm-hmm. And when I got there, I found that it was very easy to make friends because most people that live there, if they're not from there, everybody's moved there because they've had this dream of like, oh, I want to live in Hawaii. So there's like this commonality, like what brought you here? Like the conversations are very much discovery of who you're sitting next to, more so than the mainland, because everybody's moving there to find something.
Okay. And it was magical, I imagine.
Super magical.
And so you came across a few things that were very influential to your practice. So tell us about them.
Yeah, so I was working in the fitness industry when I first got there, but pretty soon after I got there, I'm a seeker like you. You mentioned, kind of being a seeker since you were 13. And I think I've always also been that way. And I just really opened myself up to whatever came my way. And it was like, I started getting invited to meditation classes and a manifestation class. And I started hanging out in healing circles and drum circles. And I started getting acupuncture. So there were like all these different modalities and things that I had never been exposed to on the mainland. And I just like dove in the deep end. And I realized through that process how much my life was improving.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a really powerful healing time for you.
It was.
In terms of recovery, were you already in recovery at this point
I started recovery in Dallas. I had been in a string of relationships that were really unhealthy. And I was trying to like figure out why this kept happening. And someone said to me, I believe you have some codependency issues. And I had no idea what that word meant. I was in my 20s and I went home and I got on the computer in the business center and I typed in codependency and I went down the rabbit hole. And it was like, for the first time in my life, when I was going to these different websites and reading the traits and the behavior patterns, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly who I am.
Yeah, it's that moment for sure. This last 3 years, there's like 3 different components of what I've been going through in the last 3 years, this deep dive, and one of them is codependency. So I am definitely there with you. So when you say you were in recovery, you're talking about recovery from codependency and not a substance abuse? Or
correct. Recovery from codependency. I grew up in a home that had addiction, abuse, verbal abuse, and dysfunction present. And my father, there was no alcohol, but there were other forms of addiction, food addiction, my mother, gambling, my father, workaholism. And when I got into recovery for codependency, what I realized is how addiction travels down. And my grandfather, who I never met, was an alcoholic and died before I was born of liver failure. So I was able to discover why I kept attracting these unhealthy relationships. Like, oh, I'm the common denominator, and this is the behavioral pattern that's been passed down in my family.
Yeah, it's like probably the most liberating thing you
can. Oh,
it
was. I was like, oh my gosh, there's an answer for this.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's like hallelujah for sure.
Totally.
For sure. Okay, so we are in Hawaii and you are trying out all these different healing things, probably having a fantastic, magical time. And at some point decide to, oh wait, I have to ask, where does the angels and ascended masters come in?
Yeah. When I got to Hawaii, it happened in Hawaii. I was really drawn to this metaphysical bookstore where I would go and I took a meditation class once a week and I took a manifestation class once a week. And then I started like looking at some of the products they sold and they had archangels and ascended master cards. And I'm like, what are these? And I would talk to the owner. The owners were Native American and they used all kinds of different modalities and they had cards and metaphysical books. And I was introduced to it then, and I wasn't certified yet. I just had card decks and I would read about them, try to read anything I could. And then later, when I got back to the mainland, I actually got certified through a Hay House event.
So what does it look like? You're using the cards with people to help bring messages through?
Yeah, I will bring them into the coaching session if that's something that the client is interested in. Not every client wants to do something like that. And then some clients really do want to do something like that. So I will, bring them in to give them insight, to do like, okay, here's what's coming up for the last 6 months, where you are now, and the next 6 months. And if they want to do that, then I will incorporate them in. Otherwise, I'll just do readings separately from the coaching sessions for other people. And then when I teach like workshops or courses, I usually will bring in something about ascended masters and archangels when I'm teaching group setting stuff too.
Are you finding that any particular angel or entity is kind of coming through, or is it just the messages that are coming through?
It can be messages or archangels and ascended masters. Like I'll notice that like certain times of the year, it'll be like one shows up like all the time. And then like another time of year, it might be somebody else. And it's really interesting. Like I taught a course, it's called Rebirth, and I made it a digital course, and it comes up every full moon is when you're supposed to start it. And one of the ascended masters that kept coming up was Jesus. And I hadn't worked, like I grew up Christian, but I don't consider myself Christian now. But Jesus kept coming up, and I'm like, I guess I'm bringing Jesus into this course, but I didn't plan that, but there was something about him and forgiveness and love that I brought that into that particular course. So I never know what's going to come up or come through, but I do go with it if it keeps coming up, because I feel like it's coming up for a reason.
Okay. And so what other kind of creative modalities do you use with your clients to help them have breakthroughs?
There can be like music components or dance or art therapy where they're doing doodling exercises, like anything that I find that they enjoy. We'll get into a discussion about like what creative things have you done before that you've enjoyed that maybe you haven't done in a while. And when we get into a conversation where they're coming up with something or something strikes them as like interesting that they may want to try, then they'll start incorporating it in, and they'll notice that their creativity is really coming to life and they're opening up that part of their brain.
So are you kind of giving them like homework assignments, or are you doing the creative arts therapy with them?
So what it really looks like, I'm not doing it with them, and I'm not really assigning homework. It's more about like what sounds like a good practice out of what we discussed today. And I let them come up with what's good for them, and then say, okay, what does it look like if you're bringing this in to your week? How much of this do you want to commit to? It's never me telling them what to do. It's more about them finding what feels good through the process of powerful questioning and active listening.
I think that is sort of a theme, right? In coaching is trying to keep working with a client for them to come up with a commitment that feels right. And even if they don't make the commitment, circling back to it and saying, well, what aspect of this can we try next, or something like that, right? I'm kind of guessing because I've done therapy, but I haven't done coaching. So
yeah, so it's always the role of the coach and the client is that the client is always an expert on their own life. And the coach is never supposed to give advice, because then that turns into like, it can turn into a codependent relationship where then the client is then dependent on the coach to give them the answer. And the whole point of coaching is to help the client become whole and confident in making their decisions for themselves.
Okay. Well, that's really cool. So we were in Hawaii trying some different things.
Yeah.
And when did it come to you to become a coach, or was there anything in between there?
So, well, I never like saw myself being a coach. What happened was in 2013, I hired my first coach. And I worked with coaches from 2000. I still work with coaches, but I worked with coaches from 2013 to 2019. And then I decided to get certified. So I'd already been working with coaches. And my first coach that I ever hired, I worked with for a year. And then I switched coaches because I wanted to work on something more specific that she didn't cover in her niche. So I switched coaches, and then my original coach went on to start the company that trained coaches that I'm certified through. And we reconnected. And it was at a time when I was like, hey, I'm really thinking about becoming a coach. And I've been seeing what you've been doing the last few years, and I'm interested in possibly going through your program. And that's how it happened.
Ooh, yeah, that sounds great. So that was 2019. All right. And so what kinds of situations or what kinds of clients do you like to work with?
Typically, I only work with women. I don't work with men. And the women that I like to work with are women that are like stuck in a codependent shame cycle, like with their self-talk. And it's like my superpower to help women transmute their shame into love and acceptance for themselves, because I had to do that myself in recovery, and I understand what they're going through and because of that, I know what questions to ask to help them move through that.
Okay. So without using any names, because that would not be cool, can you tell us about some situations, some client situations, and what their transformation looked like?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing that I always hear is that when people walk away from my coaching or my programs, is that they've hit a level of love for themselves that they never knew was possible. So the bully in their head starts to soften, and they really get in touch with their inner child and are able to turn that bully in their head into a more nurturing character. And I always use like the idea of characters and paint the picture, especially like when I'm in a session with a client, like, okay, this voice that says this in your head, if it were a character in a Disney movie, like a monster, what would its name be? So we can really like name it, and they can think of it in a different way. And that helps, like using that artistic, creative, vision and idea. It helps the client to take a step back and become more of the observer when I bring that creative lens in.
Yeah, and two things about that. One is I feel like you started out your journey helping people like transform on a physical level with
Yeah,
all of the, the phys ed, fitness kind of
personal
stuff.
training. Yeah.
And then you over time kind of evolved or changed into helping women on a more emotional, psychological level.
Absolutely. Emotional, psychological, and what I say, energetic level. Like I help them transform their energy. First, it was physical. I mean, that's what happened in my own life too. I was always really fit. I was a figure skater growing up. That's what led me to the fitness industry. But then it was like, I got to a point in the fitness industry where I felt really unfulfilled, because in that industry, I felt like, gosh, this is so image driven. And this is not really like, I don't have to be a perfect size 4 and like walk in, like there's more than this. So I felt like when I was in Hawaii, it opened me up to seeking more emotional, energetic transformation, not this outside to in, external, but rather internal, this internal transformation instead.
Yeah, and you also studied art. So I feel like you're probably a very visual person, and you're helping your clients to sort of visualize their situation, their internal dialogue and things like that in a different way. You're almost helping them make it concrete. This when you talk about the voice in the head and things like that becoming a character, you're making it more concrete so that they're able to actually deal with it, some things that are a little bit abstract, right?
Yeah. And I do, like, when I was a figure skater, I had to learn to visualize, right? And also like art. But what I found was in Hawaii, I worked with a sports psychologist because I was training for a really intense fitness competition. And she tested all my senses to figure out like which ones were the strongest. And the strongest were actually tactile and audio. And what she helped me to see is that when you're prepping for like a fitness competition, you don't just have to use your visualization. If tactile and audio are stronger, then you're able to turn the noise at the competition into white noise if you train that. And tactile, we did my muscles, like engaging the muscles instead of just visualizing. So one of the things that I've taken into my coaching practice, because not every single person can visualize. A lot of people, that's not their easiest sense to access. So with my clients, while there is some visualization, I do this practice of what I call sensual visioning, where we're going through and we're taking all the senses and figuring out which are their strongest and accessing their transformation through whichever sensory perception that they have that's the strongest, which really helps too.
Yeah, so I would say that that is another really powerful tool that you're using that is a little bit more part of the intuitive coaching
Absolutely.
toolkit than regular coaching. That's something
Right.
that people are going to get with you that they're not going to get necessarily with another coach, who, granted, another coach is going to have different tools or whatever.
Absolutely.
But for someone who, is kind of sensitive and more interested in some of these other avenues to access, they're just going to be drawn to you
Yeah.
and drawn to, your way of doing things.
Yeah. And I think every coach has a certain skill set that attracts their perfect clients to them, right?
Yeah. So we were in Hawaii.
Yeah.
You came back to Maryland. You're now in Maryland?
Yeah, I went to Miami first because I wanted to still be by the beach and in warm weather. Um, but I ended up missing seasons. I really, because in Hawaii, where I live, there were 13 different climate zones. So I could be up in the mountains and it's like, 50. It's like very much like Portland, Oregon, and it rains and it's green. And then I could drive down to the beach, or there was snow on Mauna Kea. So I had access to seasons, even though it's not 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved to Miami, and Miami was like hot and hotter, and I really missed fall and other seasons. So I came back to Maryland.
Well, you're preaching to the choir there. I am 2 hours west of Miami. That's where I'm talking to. And we are now in like the warm to hot, and it's about to get a whole lot hotter.
Yeah. I
Summer
just
coming
got
up.
back from Florida. I was on vacation there for 10 days and it was lovely, but it was like the perfect time to come back because it's like in the 60s here now. And I'm like, yay.
Yeah, that's super nice. So, what have you been working on recently
Mhm.
that you might like to share and talk about?
Sure. So, a couple things. Number one, I have like my signature program is called Rebirth, and it's now digital, and it's designed to start on the full moon of every month for 5 days. It's like a 5 day immersion program. So that's like my baby, and I launched it live in December, and then I had such good feedback. I turned it digital and have the Facebook group, and there's meditations involved, journal prompts, videos, there's archangel and ascended master work. But then the other project I've recently done is I started, because I've gotten feedback from all my courses, that the things that women really like the most about when I do workshops or courses is my meditations, because I make them on very relatable topics. They're not like, I love meditation, but a lot of the meditations out there are like, you're on a mountain and you're abundant. And, if you've gone through trauma, like that might make you not feel very good listening to that. So I've started a meditation page. It's called Flow Lounge. It's a Facebook page. And I load 2 meditations up there a day that are short and doable on very relatable topics, where if someone's like at work or they're with their family and the kids are being crazy and they need to get away just to the bathroom and put their headphones on for 3 minutes, I'm uploading those kind of meditations. And because I feel like meditation is very misunderstood, and there's so many different kinds, and when you do find the right one, it can really, really change your life. And I really want more people to meditate. So that's a project that I started recently, and I'm in the middle of a free 5 day meditation challenge. The last day is tomorrow, but I think it's something that I'm going to start running monthly, like once a month, a 5 day meditation challenge. And each challenge is going to be different. It's going to be geared towards different things, because I'm getting really good feedback. And I do really, like, when I think about what I want, like, if the greatest level of want I have for the world is for them to be able to manage their emotions. And I really think, like, if more people could meditate, we could have that in the world.
So give us some of the topics of these guided
Yeah.
meditations that are really short. They're, 2, 3 minutes long, but what are they like?
So, some of the topics are boundaries are beautiful. That was one that I did recently. One was healing jealousy. One was what's going on when you gossip, like things that you wouldn't normally hear as meditation. I did one recently that was on how to be kinder to yourself through your self-talk. Some of them will be on the more spiritual side. I do a mix. Like, I don't want to make them all super spiritual, but in some of them, I will do like connection to your angelic guides. But most of them, they're about 2 to 8 minutes. I think I did upload one that was like 9 minutes. And they're just on, really, where I get the most inspiration is with my coaching clients. I'll hear something and I'll go, oh, I need to make a meditation on that, because this is like a breakthrough is available here, and I can create something in 2 to 3 minutes that someone who's not even coaching with me can use as a tool. So that's where I've been getting the inspiration.
So they can kind of get to know you a little bit with these meditations. And we'll put a link down below to all of the things that we're talking about, the Flow Lounge and the monthly challenges and Rebirth. But going back to Rebirth, which is uh, your online course for
Yeah, it's
women,
like my signature
your
course.
signature course, What transformation are you looking to accomplish for your clients with rebirth?
So
What
rebirth is
topic?
more in depth of what I like already do. It's reconnecting, it's connecting women with their creativity, helping them love themselves more deeply, but using like the energy of the moon, because I follow moon cycles too. And the thing that I love about rebirth is I designed it so that it could be a tool to use every month. It's not like you do it once and you're done. You pay once, but then you have access. And then you know that every full moon, you're going to do this 5-day immersion course and you're going to peel off another layer of the onion in your mindset. And even I do the course myself. I go back every month and do the course. And every single time I do it, I'm working on completely different things than I did the month before. So it's a tool that it's like, okay, it's kind of like, oh, you know, your period's coming and you're going to be like this for 5 days. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, rebirth is coming and I'm going to have these 5 days. And yeah, there's a ritual at the beginning that's on the full moon and it's very mind, body, spirit centered. And it's a beautiful program and I put a lot of intention into it and I love it.
Well, I just think it's fantastic because it's something that we're missing in our society right now, which is rituals
Yes.
around, the moon cycles, but also around our menstruation. If you,
Yeah,
if that coincides, because really it's one of the biggest gifts we have as women. I know most people
it
hate
is.
it, and I hated it for a long time because I
I
didn't
used to too.
understand that what's happening is that we are cleaning out our bodies and our psyches once
Yes.
a month, and this is a really powerful thing that we have as women that frankly men don't have. They,
Yeah.
they keep bringing stuff in and bringing stuff in. They do not physically process it out. They
No.
process the energy out. And so to have a tool like this course where you can go in for 5 days and be doing these things, and oh my God, it's like the height of self-care.
It is. And
You take
you
care of
know,
yourself.
the cool thing about it, and I've even, I tell women, this is 5 days. You can start it on the full moon. But I have said, if you want to start it on your cycle, that's another way to use it. And if you want, a couple weeks ago, I was having a day where I had like a lot of stuff coming up that I wanted to process. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do the trainings from the first day of rebirth because it's all about letting go and surrender. And it doesn't matter that I'm not on the full moon. I just know that those particular trainings are perfect for the energy that I'm in right now. So even though it's designed to do that, there are bits and pieces that are a great tool to have in your back pocket for certain times of the month.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a beautiful tool to have, every single month to be able
Yeah,
to process things and move through life knowing that you are investing the time and you have this wonderful sacred practice that you're doing every month. I absolutely love it. So I'm really excited to put a link to that down below for everybody who watches this. So
yeah,
that's
and full
really
moon is this
exciting.
Sunday.
This Sunday.
Yeah,
Wow. Perfect timing.
right.
I was gonna ask you, so we've talked about kind of your past and what's going on now. What do you hope the future would look like for you, Jennifer?
I have
What are
a
you
feeling.
manifesting, woman? What are you
I
bringing
feel. I,
in?
I have a feeling I'm gonna move again,
Oh
but
my gosh.
I don't think I'm gonna move until we're a little more normal because honestly, I'm being called back to Hawaii. I feel like I'm gonna do part of my year in Hawaii and part of my year in San Francisco. And obviously I want to wait till things are more normalized. So I'm really just focusing on my business right now and, you know, personal things. But I have a feeling like, and I didn't see this coming, but like recently I've been like, in meditation and this idea has come to me and I'm like, wow, I didn't see that coming, but, you know,
Well, it would be super fun for our group if you happen to move to Hawaii and we are able to do some kind of retreat together in
What
Hawaii.
I want to do is I want to turn Rebirth into a retreat in person at some
Woo!
point. And
Yeah.
the way I see it happening is not monthly. I want to keep offering it digitally, but I feel like maybe seasonally, like 4 times a year, I might do a live event. And I feel like Hawaii is where it should happen because that's really where I started to get all these ideas and downloads.
Fantastic. It sounds wonderful. I'm excited for you and for us and the group. um so we are almost out of time. Is there anything else you might like to share about how people can find you, how people can work with you?
Absolutely. So I will drop the Rebirth link and the Flow Lounge link in the comments. You can follow me on Facebook. I'm very, you know, I'm on Facebook most of the time, but I also do blog about a lot of really great topics that are insightful. And I blog on Medium. So I will drop my Medium link. So if you want to read any articles about coaching
Yeah.
things or other things I've written about, that's another good way to follow along.
So people can try out some of your free meditations from the
Absolutely.
Flow Lounge. They can look into the course Rebirth. They can also maybe try out your free 5-day challenge.
Yep. The next one
Um,
I have. Yep.
and if they feel really called, like there are women out there that are going to feel really drawn to you, and they should just connect with you on
On
Facebook.
Facebook. Just send me a Facebook message and say,
Yeah,
hey, I saw this
we'll
and
put it
this
all. We'll
really
put it
spoke
all
to
down
me.
below. Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, super. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you
here. It
so
was
much. It was
fantastic.
so fun.
Yeah, and I am always interested in interviewing fearless and wonderful, fearless women who are doing exciting things, who are trying to lift up other women. So if anyone out there is interested in being on the show, get in touch. And yes, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
bringing
so
your
much.
energy into our group and being here. It has been a pleasure being with you, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the group in Over 40 Fearless and Free. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Welcome. Bye, Jennifer.
Bye.